We're rolling.
Welcome to the REI Rookies Podcast,
The Real Estate Investing Rookies Podcast, episode number 51, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Josh Koth.
And I'm Jack Haas.
And here at REI Rookies, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
This week, I thought we would tackle a story that was recently released by CNBC, and I think it originated from the Go Banking Rates website. And they're talking about savings and Americans and how little they're saving. And they kicked it off by saying about 42% of Americans will retire broke.
Right, or at risk of retiring broke. And it says nearly half of all Americans have less than $10,000 stashed away for retirement. I mean, that right there is a crazy stat that you have. I mean, I would say you should have at least that in an emergency fund, meaning just to cover if your fridge explodes or the furnace blows up or something. But to even have that not as an emergency fund, but to have that less than that for retirement is just crazy.
Yeah, what's even crazier is the breakdown that they had here available. But what I think is really telling, and it's that mindset shift again, where they even started the article off as, this is a huge improvement from the previous year.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm going to read this first line. From 2016 to 2017, the percentage of Americans with 0% saved increased. But this year it dropped dramatically. Not only has the percentage of adults with nothing saved fallen, but the percentage of those with 300,000 or more in retirement nest egg has increased. So you have to click through to multiple articles to find some of this information, but 13.7% of the American population has zero in savings.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's an improvement from the previous year.
It's actually a smaller number. So some people are at least taking some steps to save, but still not anywhere near to the point where they're going to not have to work until they drop dead, basically.
Right. So they classify broke as those who have 10,000 or less savings for their retirement.
That's an interesting threshold because, by our calculations, in order to spin off the amount of money necessary to, have a basic lifestyle of the average American family of about 40,000, you need to have like 1.4 million set aside. So to consider 10 grand in total savings as the threshold for being broke is kind of ridiculous because the distance between that and 1.4 million is quite large.
Yeah, I just find that insane. I mean, $10,000 is considered broke. So once you exceed that, you're no longer considered that, according to this article.
That's crazy.
So the next step is 10,000 to 49,999 saved. That just tacks on another 6.5%, 6.7% of the population is in that threshold.
Wow.
But what you're even saying, Josh, is that, you need closing in on $2 million to hit 40,000 a year. They don't even have that as a breakdown.
I know this chart goes up to 300K plus, and 300K plus seems like an unattainable number. And we're sitting here saying, if all you have is 300,000, you're not going to be able to spin off $40,000 a year, which would be a reduction in lifestyle for most people. You're not going to be able to spin that off, not even anywhere close to that. And you're going to start eating into the principal. And then it's just a matter of how long are you going to live? Are you going to outlive that? Are you going to run out of money before you die?
So they updated that threshold. You had said 40,000 too. The Bureau of Labor Statistics now has that as an average adult 65 and older is going to spend 46,000 a year.
And that might be true. And where I was getting the 40,000 was kind of just the average family income, like the median income, family household income. That's probably slightly increased over the last couple of years as it I would hope would always do, but it's somewhere between that 40 and 50,000. But the minutia almost doesn't matter. It's you're so far off from being able to retire comfortably with only having 300,000, which is considered the top bracket of this chart. They don't even exceed 300,000. You're so far off from that it almost doesn't even matter whether it's 46,000, 50,000, 55,000. They have no chance of spending out that amount of money at all. So, I guess the question for us as real estate investors is how can we change that trajectory, or how do we not be a part of that? What I would say is a casualty. If you're in that group of 10,000 or less saved, or even $300,000 saved, you're not going to be able to retire comfortably, certainly not earlier than 65, and not without a massive reduction in lifestyle.
Yeah, and it would really be neat to see, on that 300,000 pool, how many have actually achieved the level of savings that would be really required. The good news is that if you plan to die in the next 5-6 years after retirement, you can. That's really how much savings you have at 300,000.
Yeah, you can make it about 5 years,
and then you're
on the principal. And if you're depending on where they have it invested, they're going to maybe get between 5 and 10% if it's aggressively invested. And the other thing is, as people near that retirement age, they typically move their investments from what is perceived as a higher return, higher risk investments into lower return, lower risk, safer investments, right? So the amount that they're generating an ROI is typically lowered as they approach it, so that they're even less likely to generate a high enough return to get anywhere close to that goal.
Yeah, so I was really surprised by these statistics, and when they started breaking down the reasons why people aren't investing, I find some of these interesting too, because we hear some of these excuses, and I've actually thought of them myself, and trying to convince myself real estate investing was the way to go. Mm-hmm. But the number one reason is I don't make enough money.
It's so funny, right? Because people use that as an excuse why they don't start investing in real estate. I don't have any money. Well, as we realized, and we know for certain now, money is the least of your issues as far as being a roadblock to purchasing real estate. As we've stated many times, if you find a deal, that money will follow. Somebody's going to want to profit from that deal or participate in those profits with you, or you'll be able to borrow the money and give them a rate of return that's exceeding what they're getting wherever else they have their money invested. If the deal has enough meat on the bones for everybody, that money will follow the deal. So that's, removed in our minds, it's removed as an excuse. In fact, the other day we just had this discussion where we came across a good deal and we didn't have the funds figured out how we were going to purchase it for certain. So I asked you, and I said, what do you think? Should we go ahead and call this and get this locked up? And what'd you say?
Yeah, we should be able to. I think I said I was 80% confident that we could.
Right. And you're never going to be 100, right?
No, you're never going to be 100. But what I think is interesting is that even a year or two ago, I would say probably closer to 2 years ago, if you would have asked me that question, I would have probably given you another answer. Right. Now the mindset has changed so much. If you really have a true good deal, mm-hmm. You're right. You just have to make sure you tell enough people, and the money will come.
Exactly. So that's removed as an excuse. It's one of these overlapping excuses about why they don't save for retirement. Same reason they don't invest in real estate. And really, that's a BS reason. I don't make enough money. I mean, there's two ways to rectify that. Either go out and make more money or spend less money. I mean, if you work on both sides of that equation, whose responsibility is that, right? In America, we have, the freedom to educate yourself wherever you'd like and go anywhere and work in any type of industry. Your options are limitless, right? So there's always a way out there to make more money and a way to spend less money. If you have to get some roommates, you got to share a house, live in cheaper housing, move to a place where housing is more affordable, reduce your biggest expenses in life increase on the income side. There's no way you can't generate a spread there where you can have some extra money. And then it's just a question of what's the best way to redirect that money for maximum return for your household. And we've decided that real estate is that method, that the best way to get the highest return. But not making enough money is not an excuse or a legitimate reason in my mind. And that's why, according to this chart, 40% of people weren't able to save for retirement.
Well, the number 2 reason is I'm struggling to pay my bills, which I think you could put in that same bucket as I don't have enough money.
Yeah, that's me, that's just 64%, 65%
right.
of the whole pie is that. So right there, wipe off 65% of the reasons. As to me, is completely fixable by your own efforts, right?
Right. And then the next category is I won't need retirement for savings.
Now, that one needs some clarification. Does that mean they're independently wealthy and, they have royalties coming in from some other means that they don't have to have their own retirement savings, or their kids are going to take care of them? Or I don't understand what that one needs a little more drilling down.
Yeah.
How do you interpret that?
I actually think it might be just a sad excuse of what I think it is, but I actually think that it's people deciding that they don't take that responsibility upon themselves.
So they're just kind of giving up, huh?
Yeah, or they expect someone or some mystical force to take care of them
right
into their retirement. I really don't know. I mean, but in this day and age, there's frankly a lot of entitlement going on.
Right. Yeah.
I use my retirement savings for an emergency.
Yeah, and that one could happen, and that's why you need to have an emergency fund set aside just to be able to write checks for major things that happen. Obviously, not medical emergency is the one type of thing where it's almost impossible to set aside enough money for, to self-insure. Because, if you get cancer or something and you have to pay a couple $100,000 or something in treatments, I mean, that's one of the main reasons people go bankrupt. So that one would be a valid reason in my mind. But, if you needed to yank your 401k because you had to replace your furnace in your house, well, that was just a lack of planning really on your part, because everyone should have an emergency fund, because everything in your house, unless you're renting, is going to break at some point and need to be replaced probably while you live there. So there's no reason to not expect that to happen. So again, lack of planning on most people's part there.
Well, a lot of these seems to be a lack of planning. Just right. The next one is my job doesn't offer a retirement plan.
I mean, come on.
So yeah, come on.
When I was on the road playing in a band, making probably a total of $20,000 a year, I opened up a Roth IRA with Charles Schwab because I knew I needed to be putting something aside. I just started putting $250 a month in it, and I was making practically nothing, but my living expenses were really low too. So, I mean, it was, and it was kind of like almost like how the government takes your withholding out of your paycheck. I just had it automatically transfer out of my bank account every month and never saw it. So it was never in my grubby hands. So I couldn't spend it. So, that if I could do that, making $20,000 a year, I think people can find a way to put money in retirement, even if their current job doesn't offer a retirement plan.
And then the last is I'm prioritizing paying down debt.
And that one I can see making an argument for that. If you have a whole bunch of high interest credit card debt and you choose to pay that down and then start, investing, you can make that, you can sell that to me. I'd believe that. And that's 5.7% of the list. So really 94% of these people, their situations are easily rectified through their own efforts, right? That's really the point. You have to look out for yourself. You have to determine the trajectory of your financial life and take steps, take action, take massive action to ensure that your goals that you set actually happen. And really no one's going to be looking out for you except for you. And, if you're talking to your financial advisor or people like that, really everyone has, yet you just have to remember they have their own interests at heart, right? They are paid on a certain way, either commission-based or based on certain services that they sell to you, and that's how they make their living. They're not necessarily, I mean, there's lots of great people who are financial advisors. It doesn't make them evil. It's just they're not going to care as much for your retirement as you will. So you have to make sure decisions being made for you are the right ones.
Yeah, and I can't echo that enough. The concept of saving for retirement, to me now, after doing this for a couple of years, is almost alien to me.
Right.
I mean, the concept of putting money, squirreling it away, and not reaping the rewards in some way, like tangible way now, just I actually have a harder time understanding that paradigm than the one we're living in now. I mean,
right. And it's funny because, we've gone through these reasons a few times, and I'll just repeat them again. Rather than trying to generate a giant pile of money during your working years from like 20 to 65, during those 45 years of working, accumulate a giant pile of money and then use that money to spin off based on the interest it would generate and the dividends and things, live off the interest that generates. So that's the way most people do it, right? So we've chosen to, rather than create a giant pile of money, to create passive income in the form of streams of money by holding, buy and hold income producing real estate. And as soon as we have a total of passive income that exceeds our expenses, then you can retire at any point after that. You can still continue to grow those streams. And it's so much easier to generate $5,000, $10,000 a month in passive income streams than it is to save up the 1.5 million or whatever it was that will spin off the 40,000 that you need to hit the average family income. Much, much easier, much quicker to get there. So that's, again, why we that's our overarching reason why we chose real estate as our passive income vehicle. And that's our strategy at all times, is to grow that passive income, our monthly passive income, through building our portfolio. So in case people don't know, that's how this relates to real estate investing. And it's always what's driving us.
I think that's a great summary, and we'll just jump into the coach's corner. And we've recommended these books in the past, and you're probably going to hear us recommend them again in the future. But we have one of them sitting right here, and I'm cleaning off the top of it. Josh, you just spoke on a panel for this, The Millionaire Real Estate Investor.
Yep.
A great book. It's really kind of the nuts and bolts and kind of the beginning of what we've been doing, what we base our investing on. The Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Cash Flow Quadrant, those are other books that we can't recommend enough. And that's really a great way to get your mind right and get that mindset in the proper situation. But the Million Real Estate Investor is that next step where it really starts to get into the action and nuts and bolts.
Yeah, it lays out the plan for you. Whereas Rich Dad is more of a get in the right frame of mind of generating passive income. And The Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller, Dave Jenks, and Jay Papasan, that's really lays it all out there step by step of how to do it. So definitely get those 3 books, and we'll put links for them in the show notes as well.
So as always, if you have any questions, comments for us, please shoot us an email at info@reirookies.com.
Make sure you hit us up on Twitter and Facebook at REI Rookies. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other rookie investors out there find the show.
And remember, get off the bench
and get into the game. We'll see you next time.